Hello and welcome back to this month's episode of Tambellini's Top of Mind podcast. We're here to discuss the complexity of simplifying and modernizing student support services. Whether or not students opt to take courses in person, online, or a little bit of both this coming fall, most institutions are hard at work in their quest to modernize their virtual campus services to improve the student experience. Committing to this goal is a lot easier than delivering on it, however. And behind the scenes, years of planning, internal consensus building, and coordination must happen before institutions can actually begin to deliver on this promise of streamlined services. Today, we're going to be speaking with Darcy Van Patten, University of Arizona's Chief Technology Officer. She's going to share her perspective and expertise on Arizona's efforts to implement and expand adoption and functionality of an enterprise-wide CRM solution to address this problem. Welcome to the show, Darcy.
Thank you, Katelyn. I'm coming to you today from beautiful Sonoyta, Arizona. It's about an hour outside of Tucson, beautiful wine country. It's a sunny day, so it's nice to be here. I love talking about the work. It's exciting to help transform the student experience, and just happy to talk with you, Katelyn.
Thanks so much for coming on, Darcy. I'm really looking forward to hearing how you have tackled this at Arizona, what the problem was, what it's taken to get to a wonderful, robust solution. And with that, can you tell us how did you get to deciding that you needed an enterprise-wide CRM to streamline and improve the student user experience? What got you here?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been at the university about 3.5 years, and as I was just joining the university and starting to meet some of the executive leadership that I'd be working with, one of the first conversations I had with our vice provost for student success at the time really led to him saying two things, which is, we need a CRM system and we need a student portal. And as I often do, I try to backtrack away from talking about technology and into talking about what are the problems we're trying to solve. And so I think I started to say something like, well, what's leading you to think that we need those things, and what are the problems that we have today? But that conversation was really quite critical. And then thankfully and luckily enough, about 3 months later, I was able to get involved in the very large scale strategic planning effort. And as I started to talk again with my leaders and my partners, they had some really important ideas in their proposals related to technology. And I asked, how do you feel about me cherry picking your ideas and building off of them? And I essentially proposed an effort I called Personal Digital U, which was all around a high quality personalized digital experience for our students. And really, that's how CRM was born. A lot of the components of that had to do, not with the transactional things like registration and financial aid. And of course, those things all have to be there. But it's about the human interactions, right? The advisor meetings and interactions, about the interactions with students, with their peers through clubs and communities, and all of those connections that students make. So that was really the beginning. And, I, having worked on CRM before and knowing that many times those efforts fail, I pulled together all the things that I knew we would need. You need to focus on user experience, and you need to focus on data quality, and you need to focus on training and adoption and getting buy-in of your partners. And so I included all of that in the proposal, a little bit with the attitude of like, well, if we can't do it right, then we shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it got funded, and it really became a flagship effort out of the strategic plan. That was like 3 years ago now. Yeah.
Well, and you touched on something pretty interesting, this idea of first you define the end goal, which is what is the ideal student user experience. So how did you come to that vision?
Well, when I arrived at the university, where PeopleSoft School, as are a lot of large institutions, and the particular version of PeopleSoft that we are on has a user experience from about 1998. And I will say things like, I'm sure in 1998, this was a magnificent experience, right? But the expectations have changed dramatically since 1998. And our students really expect a high quality consumer experience. And so, really just looking at all of the technologies that they were using, the lack of integration, what that experience is like, and then realizing that as we become a global university with a large online program, many students never experience the beauty of our campus. And so their experience that they have with us is their digital experience. And the quality of that experience really sets the tone for the university as a whole. All that said, though, we've done a tremendous amount of user research with students directly, first year student journey mapping. We've done empathy mapping, where students really talked about what was that moment in time when you knew that the University of Arizona was the right place for you, and what did that feel like? So we've done a huge amount of work directly with students. We've done design studios with them, where they're thinking and helping us understand kind of how they mentally think about things and what type of experience they expect, and really just turn that into a pretty comprehensive, overall vision for that, what their experience might be. And then we continue to work with them as we're developing our designs with user experience designers, doing usability studies, focus groups. I mean, students are just a core part of how we develop that over time.
I think the point you just made is so important, that it's really impossible to design the ideal student experience without the focus being on the student and having their voice.
Yeah, and it was, the first year student journey mapping workshop, which I did host 3 years ago, almost exactly. It was in August, I believe. That was really telling, because we really work with students as if every department is the only department that a student's interacting with, right? And we heard loud and clear from them that they want to work with us as the University of Arizona. They don't think about, oh, this is the bursar's office, and this is the registrar's office, and this is the tutoring center. They just think about, as a young adult learner right now, what is it that I need to accomplish today? And how do I navigate the complexity of this huge university? We don't make it easy for them at all. And the way that we partition and silo, how we think about the university is not at all how students think about it. And we involved all of our partners in that. So we had the registrar's office in the room, we had advisors in the room, we had instructors in the room, because as important as it is to inform the design work that we're doing, it also needs to inform behavioral change and cultural change by developing shared empathy, really, for what the student's experience is like.
And you mentioned that this has been a 3-year project, and the beginning was really the planning and the strategizing. So once you got through that design work, Darcy, what was the next step for you?
Yeah, so we actually kicked off roughly 2.5 years ago. It was January 7th, 2018. What year is this? Yeah, so it was January 7th. I think it was 2018. Yeah, is when we kicked off, and there were roughly 8 University of Arizona employees and 12 partners that I had gotten quickly to come onto campus. And we really started kicking into gear planning right then. So, I mean, we are an agile shop, and I have been successful in getting our executive sponsors and others to understand that I'm not going to give you a 3-year roadmap. Mm-hmm. Any 3-year roadmap that I develop today will absolutely be wrong. I guarantee it. And especially come COVID, right? I mean, anything we had planned to do completely got turned upside down with COVID. And so from the very beginning, I've said, this is not like implementing a student information system where once you can register students and you can disperse financial aid and you can get bills paid, roughly you're done, right? I mean, that's not all of it. I mean, we don't know what the finish line is here. There probably realistically is not a finish line, And so from the beginning, I really stuck to that, and it's worked well because it's allowed us to be flexible. It allowed us when COVID hit to, finish the 2-week sprint we were on, put that code into production. So we've just delivered the value that we worked on and switch gears completely. We needed to switch gears and develop a change of schedule form that would help students adjust their schedules very late in the semester to stay on track academically. We pivoted my marketing cloud team to become the internal agency for executive leadership because they weren't able to get really critical communications out. And we were able to do that because of the agile way that we work. We weren't putting 6 months of work on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like you chose Salesforce for this initiative. Had you already had Salesforce in place at the university before you started this larger enterprise-wide project?
Yeah, so like many universities, there were small, maybe 10 different kind of instances of Salesforce that had been purchased and stood up in really small units in standalone mode. So we had small pockets of use of Salesforce. Certainly I was familiar with Salesforce. I also worked at Oracle, so was familiar with Oracle Sales Cloud. Actually worked on a recruiting managed package when I worked at Oracle. And then when I was at the University of Washington, we implemented Ellucian Recruiter, which is a managed package that's built on top of Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So I was familiar with the market. What Salesforce really has going for it is the community. It's an amazing community of adopters. You work with higher education, so you know how we are. We share information, right? We love to talk to one another. We love to share best practices. We, have a very open, intellectually open community by design, right? Academically. And there's just such an amazing community of adopters that I was able to learn from early on and really helped me shape the business case, the budget, an understanding of like, okay, what are all the potential pitfalls? What do you wish you had planned for early that you didn't? So the community of adopters is really what makes Salesforce stand out for me, as well as kind of the ecosystem of additional vendor products that plug and play fairly seamlessly because it's a strategic investment for them, right, to play well with Salesforce.
So you had to take these separate instances and make it into an enterprise-wide solution. What did that look like? What kind of resources did that take?
Yeah, so back to developing that early proposal, I understood obviously, you're going to need a Salesforce team, right? You're going to need Salesforce admins, you're going to need developers, but it's so much more than that because you also have this kind of all of these other platforms and systems that you need to integrate with. So, the team overall, when we started, of course, the Salesforce stack development team and admin team, an integration team, as well as investment in an integration platform, a data strategy and quality team, small team, but a team, training and adoption, right? Adoption is really the most critical thing, I think, with enterprise CRM because it's not like a payroll system. You don't have to use it. Like payroll, if you don't enter your time, if you don't, use the HR system, you don't get paid, right? There's no adoption risk there, right? But with enterprise CRM, nobody's, telling people you have to use it. And so that adoption piece and making sure that you're really kind of building the right thing that people need and that they're going to want to use is also really critical. I think the actual first role that I brought on was a marketing and communications professional so that we could start to tell the story of the work that we were going to do together and the value that it was going to bring, stand up a website, start interacting with people. So I think that was the very first role that I hired onto the team. User experience. I mean, we're talking about digital, student services and simplifying student services. User experience was also really, really key to bring onto the team. We've actually shifted the team over time. So, I would say that the first year was really all about creating these core capabilities. So thinking of a CRM system, and this includes Marketing Cloud for us. you've got this powerful service platform of case management, and we have, kind of a multi-channel intake mechanism, telephone to case, integrating to Amazon Connect, live chat to case, web form, email, text. These are all channels by which our student service organizations and our advisors and others are interacting with students. And then coming into that case management and kind of that work queue, workload management. So really important capabilities, adding into that appointment management, and then thinking about engagement. So events, campaigns, how you involve students in like leadership groups or mentorship groups, and email marketing, obviously also really important. So that first year was all about these kind of core plug and play capabilities that then any given unit at the university, so think tutoring or think diversity and inclusion office, can adopt based on what their needs are. About a year and a half in, the scales really started to tip from building things to having people adopt and use things, right? So we actually restructured the team to include what I consider kind of the product team. They're putting those new capabilities out, new feature enhancements. We're just starting on corporate relations as an example. And then what I consider an internal professional services team that is really consulting with individual units around, okay, what do you do? How do you serve students? And which of these core capabilities do you most need to accomplish your work? So that's a lot of words.
Oh, it's great. And it sounds like as you went from, building to focusing on adoption, you've also focused on solution areas that people can choose on campus to adopt. Can you tell us about those, how you've thought about and structured these solution areas?
Yeah. So, I call them core capabilities, solution areas. I think either works, but really what are those reusable, repeatable things that people do? I meet with students, that's through appointments. I answer questions for them. Okay, how do they want to ask that? Is that virtual? Is that telephone? Is that, maybe in the fall this year, walking into the lobby of our admin building and actually getting face-to-face help? Events, right? Obviously, events happen all across campus. And we had no central events management system. So just think hundreds and hundreds of Eventbrites trying to patch those together with constant contacts and spreadsheets and, all of these things that people were doing trying to really support these activities. And you just see those repeat patterns, right, of behavior and interactions. And then that's what tells you, okay, we need a core capability here. Appointment management was a good example. Our advisors obviously scheduling time to meet with students and needing a solid solution to support that need is where we started with appointment management. But thankfully we built in Zoom integration from day one. Not many people used it, but tell you what, March 2020, the data talk, right? We went from almost entirely in-person advising appointments to almost entirely Zoom appointments within a matter of a week, right? And that's where having that in place already was so critical. If we hadn't had that in place, we would have been scrambling really to make that adjustment. So yeah, it's that repeated patterns of interaction. And then what are kind of the core architectures that can be scaled across the university? So you're not building a super bespoke solution just for one department, really trying to solve what I call horizontal problems, which means that they're shared and that they really run across the university.
So what are some of those critical areas that you identified that do run across the university? Can you talk about some of those modules that you've built?
Yeah, sure. The appointment management module was a really large investment for us. We did develop a custom module there for academic advising because we had pretty advanced requirements, and Salesforce Advisor Link was still in its pretty early days and didn't have what we needed at the time. So appointment management was a big one. That's both kind of pre-scheduled appointments as well as drop-in appointments. With appointment management comes other things like lobby check-in and managing a queue. That's as an example, as well as advisor notes. So that's one example. I mentioned earlier the multi-channel service desk capability. So, examples of that might be Office of Scholarship and Financial Aid. Prior to coming on to Trellis, which is our internal brand for our Salesforce program, Office of Scholarship and Financial Aid was using 4 different systems to try to piece together the service that they provide to students. They had, a telephony call center solution. They had a custom built lobby management and kind of ticket, like you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and you pull that tag, right?
Yeah,
and then you get called, okay, number 43, your time is up, right? Maybe 2.5 hours later, or whatever, right? But they had that custom system. They had another back office, like ticket tracking, like case management system. I forget what the fourth, I think a different live chat. So that's an example. They had 4 different pieced together solutions that they were trying to use to provide really good service to students. Of course, last year with fall disbursement happens, right before the semester, and we were all 100% virtual. Normally the administrative building lobby would be full of students waiting to get support. And now all of this is happening in an integrated way with Zoom and, Salesforce and, the other solutions that they're using. So that's another example. Events management, I mentioned at one point, I think it was 2019. Maybe it was 2020. The years, I tell you, last year was like a blur for me.
No, it happened that whole year.
I know, right? Like time takes forever, and at the same time, it's gone in a minute. Anyway, we did a survey with over 400 people responding, event coordinators across campus, and everyone was just trying to piece together small solutions. And of course, with paid events, you've got PCI compliance, and you've got this additional risk and a need to really support that in a unified way. So events management is another example. We actually ended up, we did an RFP and we selected Blackthorn as our vendor partner. Blackthorn is built directly on the Salesforce platform, and stood that up really quickly, actually. Within probably 6 weeks, hosted our first virtual event, which was Optical Sciences graduate orientation. And the way we work is we try to stand up as small a thing as possible. Like, what is the smallest minimal viable product that we can put out there with real people using it, and then have them really, tell us where it needs to grow, break it where it makes sense, help us expand the product experientially, not just theoretically. And that's been a really important part of the way that we work, is involving our end user groups really, really early as possible, and evolving what we do based on their feedback. So events is another one. Mass marketing, email marketing is another one. We actually do have Salesforce's Social Studio platform, which is for social media management and also social listening. That was released quite early. Texting as a service is coming out right now. What am I missing? I think
it's a lot.
It is a lot. And what's wonderful about that is when you have this suite of core capabilities, then you start to look at other audiences. Like, we're just now starting to partner with our research, innovation, and impact organization and our government relations, as well as some colleges around corporate, and external partner relationships. And so much of those core capabilities and how we interact with others, whether they're our students or whether they're our external partners, it's a combination of many of those same capabilities. And so, you really get the maximum value, I think, when you think about it in this kind of architectural way.
Darcy, a lot of the things you're speaking about touches on change management and the ability to manage and meet expectations of your constituents, get people on board. How have you handled change management? This is a beast of a project you've embarked on.
Yeah, it is. And, like I said, it's not a payroll system. You don't have to use it. We're a large highly distributed university from a decision-making standpoint. And so there's very few times when there will be, authoritarian statements of thou shalt use this system, right?
Yes.
And so it really is trying to understand the problems that people are trying to solve for their own individual units. And what can you bring to the table to help them, right? I mean, you have to have high value. You have to offer high value, or they're not going, to want to use your product. Now, thankfully, this is funded by the university, and so, one value proposition we have is that it's free to you, right? You're not going to have to buy a new product, or maybe you're already paying a vendor, $15,000-$20,000 to use a product, and we can provide you the same capabilities and free up some of your money for something else. We've had a tough financial year, as has every university, and where people can save money locally on their budgets, that's really attractive. I'd say we also really try to help sell the value proposition of being in a shared platform. Back to that student journey, the complexity of a student having to interact with hundreds of different departments on hundreds of standalone systems, all that behave differently, that look different, that may or may not have their data accurately in the system. It's very frustrating. And so, you sell it through the student experience lens, and you also sell it through, their ability to understand how the student is interacting with the university. Like, all right, I'm meeting with the student as an advisor, and I see that they've, been in the financial aid office and repeatedly, or that they're working with the registrar right now on some late change petition or something. It helps me provide better advising service because I know more about what the student is kind of doing and what types of interactions they're having. So those are definitely some of the selling points. I mean, there's always going to be some units that want to do their own thing. They want to stay in their own system because, they love it, they're comfortable with it. They love it. They think it differentiates them as a college or as a unit. And that's fine. I try to, I try to pick the wins, right?
Wow.
Pick the wins. And also just know that, eventually, right? Eventually, we're going to continue to offer more capabilities and value. We're going to continue to build the integrated student experience that we are working on right now, and actually using the Salesforce experience platform for that. And over time, it's going to be a disadvantage for them to be in their own standalone system because they won't be integrated, right? And over time, students will be like, why do you have me over here in this separate system when all of my other world is here, right? In the Trellis integrated portal. So over time, they'll come. And,
Really
it's nice.
smart.
Right now demand is,
No, that's smart. I think that's really smart that, you're saying, hey, we're going to just offer a really big value and there's grassroots adoption instead of this bottom down, you have to have this approach.
Yeah. And right now, we have more demand than we can serve, quite frankly. And that's why I mentioned that we reorganized the team into this kind of professional consulting services where we can really good at onboarding people. And it's not unlike, vendor. You mentioned before the call, you're going to a big consulting organization, right? And it's not unlike that where, it really is meeting with an organization and like, what is the work that you do to serve students and what are the problems that you're trying to solve for? And here's this tool bag of core capabilities. Which of these are most important for you? And how do we onboard you incrementally in a way that doesn't bring your organization to a grinding halt because it's just too much too fast, right? So, I think the theme is like integrated data, very open permission sets, set of core capabilities that can be mixed and matched for any given department based on what they're trying to achieve. And then really, that consultative approach to bringing people in.
Darcy, thank you so much for sharing all of your lessons learned and the approach that you've taken to the enterprise CRM project at the University of Arizona. It's really, really great work. And I think that you have the right mindset. That's why you have so much requests for adoption, exceeding the ability for your team to deliver, because it's really taken this approach of a service to the constituents. And it sounds like it's been a huge success.
Yeah, it's still, in the making, right? We have so much work still ahead of us. I mean, it's amazing to think of how much we've accomplished, and really, as with many things, technology-wise, the pandemic really did accelerate people's willingness to adopt new technology, because it was an absolute necessity. But I mean, there's so much still ahead of us, and yeah, I'm excited. It's always fun to solve problems and to give people new solutions that make their daily work easier. We know we're making the student experience better all the time, and that's just that's exciting.
Thank you for being on the show with us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's really been great.
That concludes this month's episode of Tambellini's Top of Mind podcast. Don't forget to check out our other episodes, blogs, and member-only resources at thetambollinigroup.com.